Alright, welcome back. So there's a small problem with this game. It's something that's been bothering me for a while, right? So if I press play and I walk into this, I am set on fire, which is fantastic. But if you've played any other game and you're on fire, then you should be taking damage. Now, for you to take damage, you need a concept of health in the first place, right? So in this video, we're going to start by creating a concept of health. We're going to create a variable called health to store the player's health. And then we're going to cause some damage to the player whenever he touches that fire thing. To do that, what we need to do is, first we need to find out where the blueprint for the player is in itself. Now I told you, all of these things are actors. But when we play, there's this player which doesn't seem like an actor. But I told you that everything that's spawned in the level is an actor. Well, the truth is, even the player is an actor, and the player also has a blueprint associated with it. Right? To find out where, when you use the third-person template in Unreal, a folder is created for you called third-person blueprint. I'm going to click on that folder. I'm going to go into blueprints, and I found your third-person character. Right? So this is the third-person character, and as you can see, like any other blueprint, it's got a viewport, it's got construction script, and it's got event graph. So I'm going to go back to viewport, and I'm going to see the, the mesh or the tangible stuff that's associated with this. And I can see that there's a capsule component for collision. There's an arrow component for direction. There's the actual mesh, and this mesh has some animation associated with it, an animation blueprint. And we'll come to what all of this is in a bit. In the next episode, we'll break this down, hopefully. Right? We have a camera boom, which gives you some distance between the player, and it's basically a cool little component that makes sure that if you get stuck in corners, then the camera moves out a little bit so that you're able to see. And then there's the actual camera. If you go to the perspective of the camera, you see this is the actual distance you see the player from. Right? So this all works together to give you the illusion that the character works flawlessly. It does work flawlessly, but there's a lot of stuff going on behind it. Then, if you go to the event graph, like I told you, all of this is associated with some code. And you look at this and you get scared immediately, right? You'll be like, wow, there's so much going on. But as you'll see in the next episode, this is all not very complex and we can break it down. The only reason it looks complex to you is because it's the first time you're seeing this and you're like, wow, there's so much code being written. Right? So what we're going to do is, in this episode, we're going to learn how to create a new variable called health. Right? So we're going to press variable and we're going to put in health. Right? So in this health, instead of Boolean, I'm going to make it float. Right? Now, the reason I'm making it a float is because we want the health value to be a decimal. Right? You want a health like 55.5. Right? That's why I used float and not integer. Right? So floats allow you to have, see all of these data types, and these are called data types. And you can have many different types of data types. And the reason I use float is because I want those decimals, whereas with integers, I don't get the access to those decimals. Most of the time for storing numerical values, you will be using float. So float is a good and safe option to go with. Right? I've just created this health, and I want to give this a default value, right, in the details. But before that, I have to compile the blueprint. So I'm just going to compile it. I'm going to save it. Change the default value to 100. Right? Let our player start with 100 health. So that's great. I'm going to save that and I'm going to play. And nothing happened. So why isn't something happening? And the reason for this is because health is a concept we made up. Right? Even though we all know in the real life, in the real world what health is, or in games what health is, in this game, in our code, there's no concept of what this health is and when it goes down or when it goes up or whatever, right? So what we need to do is actually create the concept of health and give it some meaning, right? That's what you use variables for. You give variables meaning, but variables in itself, they're just there to store some values, right? So what I'm going to do is I want to be able to see my health first. So I want to be able to create some sort of UI or some sort of progress bar to see what my health is like. If I have half health, then let's show half the progress bar or something like that. To do that, we're going to create a UI by right-clicking, going to user interface, and clicking on widget blueprint. Right? I'm going to call this heads up display. If you've played a game like PUBG or Fortnite or whatever, there's always a health bar and a bar for your ammo and for your special powers or whatever, and that's called the heads up display. So I've created the heads up display. I'm just going to double click this. And you'll notice that this is a lot like the tool Figma, right? So you've got this canvas and you can draw on the canvas. What I want is I want this simple progress bar. I'm just going to take this progress bar, change it a little bit. And I want to show you what this looks like when it's filled. So, it's quite easy to fill. If you want to change things like colors and icons and whatever you want, and the background image and the fill image, feel free to do it. This is all really trivial stuff. This should be easy. I'm not going to get into that, right? So I'm just going to have a simple progress bar. I'm going to click on the bind option, right? The bind is, I want this progress bar to reflect the health of the player, right? I don't want this to be some random value. I want it to be linked to the health of the player. So I'm going to click on create binding. Now, as you know, in blueprints, we have a viewport, we have a construction script, and we have the event graph. But when you create a widget, which is not like a blueprint, it's similar, but it's not like a blueprint, then you have two things. You have the designer, which we just went into, and then you have the event graph, right? And apart from the event graph, we have these bindings for the different, kind of UI elements that we have. So what I want is, this return value right now is 0. Right now the percentage or the progress bar is always going to be 0. So I want this to reflect the value of the player's health. So what I'm going to do is, as usual, I'm going to do get player character. I want to get that player character. And I actually want to get the health of this character. But to get the health of this character, and here's the kind of dilemma, I need to go to the player character's blueprint. I'm going to open that blueprint for a second. Right? You see this third person character. I want this health, this thing I want, right? And I want that value in this blueprint. So technically, I'm in one blueprint, but I want the value of another blueprint. To do that, we use the concept of casting. Casting allows you to go from one blueprint and take the values of a different blueprint. To do that, I'm just going to open the execution pin. I'm going to say cast to third person character, right? Which is the exact name of this I'm looking for, cast to third person character, right? And obviously it needs an object, so I'm going to drag the object into it. Now you might think, well, what is this object that Varun is speaking about? Isn't health the same? Well, not really, because just like we have, this third person character is one blueprint, but I can actually drag multiple third person characters into this. I can drag as many as I want. I'm just going to undo all of this, right? I can drag as many as I want. So you might ask a question now, which third person character do you want, right? You might have 100 on the map. So I want a very specific third person character's health, right? To do that, I've got the player character and I'm returning that as the object. So I'm saying, well, Unreal, I want only this base character whose character 0, and we've set this character 0 in the project settings, and I'll show you how to change that later. So when the game starts, Unreal already has an information of whose player index 0, which is, when you write code, numbers don't start from 1, they start from 0. So the first player, and that's the character that I want to cast to, and that's the character's health that I want. So what I want to do is, as third person character, which means as this blueprint, I'm going to pretend like I'm this blueprint for a while. I'm going to get health, right? I've got my player's health. I've got this value. And then I send this value to this, right? So I hope you guys understand what we've done here, which is we've gone to the other blueprint, we've checked the health quickly, and we've got that back, and we've sent it back to the progress bar. So I'm going to compile, I'm going to save, and if I play the game, you'll see that there's still nothing, right? We just created a widget bar, and we can't still see anything. So to fix that, we need to draw the widget bar on the screen. If you don't draw the widget bar on the screen, Unreal doesn't know whether to even use this resource, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a third person character, and in the event graph, we're going to right click, we're going to type event begin play. So when the game first starts, we will drag out an execution pin, and we will say create HUD. Well, actually create widget. We'll just create a widget. All right, so we'll create a widget, and the owning player, which is the player controller, get player controller. Right, so the difference between player controller and player character is the player controller is you. It's the person behind the controller. So it's your screen that we want to draw to. And there's a difference between who owns the screen and who owns the character. The person who owns the screen is you. Right, so get player controller. I'm going to select heads up display. Right, and I am going to add to player screen. Right, so I'm going to add this thing to the player screen. Right, so that should be good enough. Right, now if I just play, you'll see that there's a nice little progress bar at the bottom left. right? So this progress bar is not moving, but the value of the progress bar, it seems like, is 100%, which is being mirrored by the heads up display. Now let's make this thing create some damage, right? So when we're playing, we see that there's a health bar, but it's still not changing when we need it to, right? To make it change, to make our health change, we'll go into a little fire spawner here, and what we'll do is we'll make some space, and we will actually reduce the player's health. Now again, we need to go from this blueprint to the to the third person blueprint. So these are two different blueprints. So I need to go from here to here and then access the health variable and change that. To do that, as we've done before, we cast to third person character, which is the name of this blueprint, right? And it needs an object, so we will get player character. So out of all the player characters that could possibly exist, we're getting player index 0. And again, like I've told you, we've set this in the project settings, and later on I'll teach you how to change that and change it to any character you want. But right now we're taking player 0, putting it in as the object, and what we're going to be doing is, as the third person character, we are going to get health, right? So first we'll get the player's health, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to do float minus float, right? So we'll subtract 25 from the health, and then what we'll do is, as the third person character, we'll set health, right? So set health becomes an remember, get doesn't require an execution pin, but setting something requires an execution pin. So I will set the health, right? And I want to set this health value as current health minus 25, right? So compile and save. Now you might think this will work and it should, change the progress bar, but it won't. And the main reason for this is progress bars, and if you look at this one closely, progress bars are from 0 to 1, right? Right now our health values are in 100, right? So it's from 100 to, it's going down from 100 to 75 the minute we touch that. So it's still going to show a full progress bar. So what we want to do is we want to go into our binding. To do that, we just click on the, graph editor. And here in the binding, what we do is we'll take this health and we will float divided by float. We'll divide this by 100, right? And instead of passing just the health, which could be 75 or 80 or 100 or whatever, we'll divide that by 100 and send it to the progress bar. And this is why I said, right, you need a little bit of basic math to understand this. I'm telling you, this is high school math, so you don't have to worry about the complexity, but this should work. Right? As you can see, we've lost 25 in health, and it's never going to trigger again because you're already burnt, right? I think what we can do is we can just destroy, in the event graph, we can just destroy the main actor if that's necessary. Actually, we'll just do a destroy actor, right? And you can destroy any actor. Instead of the target being when the target is self, it will destroy the instance of whichever fire spawner. We don't want that to happen, right? We want to destroy something else. So the target that I want to destroy is this spawn emitter, right? So I'm just going to destroy this. Actually, let's see if I can destroy this. I'm sure there's another way to destroy this. Just drag it off. And one thing you need to know about dragging things off is when you drag it off, Unreal gives you the actions that are context sensitive, which is, these are all things that will work with this. So I just want to destroy this. I want to destroy this component, right? And do this, right? This might destroy it instantly. Let's see. It's destroying it instantly. And that's why it shows already burnt. It didn't even show you the particle effects. And that's because in Unreal, all these calculations happen super fast. So going from here to here, the calculation happens within one frame. So the human eye will not be able to detect that the particle was created and then destroyed. To do that, what we need to do is create a delay node. All right, so we'll just use a delay node, right? Just this delay node. And we'll delay maybe for 1 second. Right? So delay actually prevents this, it makes the animation continue for 1 second. Don't worry, it doesn't lag your entire game. It only lags this particular execution pin. And after that, it will just destroy the component, the particle emitter. So we have that, and after a second, it's gone. And you will never be able to trigger that again. So that's your fire spawner right there, guys. And if you want, you can play with the delays. Maybe make it 4 seconds. Maybe you want the player to be on fire for a while. Right? He's lost 25 health. He's got on fire, and now he's fine. Right? So that's how you kind of use logic to make your health bar to go from one blueprint to another. This is a slightly long tutorial. In the next one, we'll catch on to some more concepts. See ya.